behind the scenes. And Baylor, yet another statement with a win in Austin the last time that UT men play at the Frank Irwin Center. And it was a scratch and claw game like many of them are in the Big 12. And then there was this poof, 9-0 run led by everybody. Akinjo, Sohan, Flo, obviously Flagler, Kendall Brown, among some others. And Baylor now is securely a #1 seed when it comes to what the bracketologies say and other particular rating services after the wins against Kansas and also now Texas, and still a slight outside chance that the Big 12 could have a big lump at the top with KU right now, mathematically percentage better, but right now even because of the number of games they've played, won, and the ones Baylor and Texas Tech have done as well. Texas Tech took care of business. The women's basketball team, another Big 12 title that's at least a share, 12 consecutive years. Great for Nikki Collin and company. So let's start with Baylor, the men in Austin. You knew that they would have all of them frothing at the mouth. Last game, UT, tired of losing to Baylor, at least recently in the last 8 to 10 or 12 years or so. My goodness. And that, Paul, you and I text all throughout the show. Who would be the star of the game last night if you had one?
I mean, it would probably come down to a tie between Akinjo or, a runoff between Akinjo and Flagler. They'd have to get up and have some sort of debate. But I just thought it was really excellent that they just kept chopping wood. They kept going after it. Since that Kansas game, this team has kind of arisen a little bit in that they – and I said this yesterday, they didn't have to be gritty. They didn't have to gut out wins last year. They didn't have to gut out wins in the first 15 games this year, but they've reinvented themselves once again, and it's a credit to the coaching staff and the players of accepting of their new roles and all that. So, it was interesting and great to see that Baylor could do that. Texas closes out their arena with a loss, which is never what you want to do, and it was packed, which is rare for that arena when it comes to basketball. That's only happened a couple times recently. So it was all good for Baylor all the way around, especially down the stretch where they didn't start out great, and they had both teams had tough games on Saturday, and they looked kind of the same for the majority of it.
Yeah, it was a really impressive win, shutting down Frank Irwin Center with a Baylor win. That's obviously going to leave a bad taste in UT fans' mouths, which is what you want to do, which is what you love to do, and which is what your goal was last night. Not only that, but to, of course, more importantly, keep yourself there in the mix at the top of the standings. KU's got a couple of extra games compared to Baylor's just one remaining. Tonight, TCU on the road. I mean, maybe that could be a possibility. Baylor fans I know are going to be watching very closely, hoping that KU can trip up here in these last 3 games. I'm not banking on it by any means, but they put themselves in the position at least. And given, the injuries and how this season's sort of gone up and down, I mean, for them to be at this point, to be 25-5, to have dealt with the injuries they've dealt with and to just keep coming at you and to keep winning games. And the week that they've had, like you look at this last week especially, I mean, from the Oklahoma State win that was, a tough one to pull out, to then, going back-to-back in 3 days, a big a college game day Saturday main event with Kansas, and to win that one in front of a raucous crowd, and then to turn around 2 days later, go close out a building on the road against a rival in Texas on Big Monday. I mean, it's a hell of a little, 3-day stint for a 3-day loop for the Baylor men's basketball team to go and get those 2 wins. And that Oklahoma State one was big as well a few days before. So, yeah, I mean, Flagler was great. Just number of contributors and a number of stars. Kendall Brown, I think, opened some eyes last night. I think there were some Texas fans that certainly maybe were expecting it to be more about others, and he, gave them a little like a little something they weren't expecting that played into it as well. But just an incredible all-around team effort, great coaching job as well, and tremendous fight.
All right, the YouTube chat room, just to kind of mention a few of you, Scotty B, almost always our leadoff hitter. If not Scotty B, there's others. We appreciate you on 365 Sports. Jacob, JJ, Reckham Tech is what he had. Jacob, let's get it going. Scotty B, impressive performances by both teams to win on the road. Chris, prayers for Ukraine. Also from Lee Buttercup, Baylor now against Texas in men's and women's basketball since 2010 season have now won 12 of the last 13, 6 straight against the men, and 5-0 this year in both men's and women's basketball and football. And Randy Tomlinson, Chris Beard is overrated. Lee Buttercup.
I just think Scott Drew's got his number. I think that's what it is.
9-3 against Chris Beard. There's that. That's facts right there, Craig. And after seeing LJ limp around in that boot yesterday, it's difficult to see him ever playing again. That's from Hilda, perhaps. As every day goes by, who knows if he gets a chance, if they play deep enough. And then also, Randy, Texas has a better chance to win an SEC championship in basketball than football. They won't win an SEC championship, SEC, or get in the playoffs. And again, who knows how that works out. But right now, they're just trying to, the men's basketball team is still going to be a 4 or 5. Now, all of a sudden, they're down to a 5 seed. And they've had a couple of nice wins. Of course, they were swept by Texas Tech, swept by Baylor, and then they had the win against Kansas, who they still play at the end of the year. I got a note. I'll let you go, obviously, first. Do we have the stat that I put up with Flo Thomas available for us on the show today? You do? Okay, not yet. Okay, hold on, Craig. I'm sorry. They put it up. Here is Flo Thomas' stats. Since Jonathan Tchamwa went down, averaging 28 minutes, 11 points, nearly 9 rebounds, a block a game. He's averaging 6.6 free throw attempts, 60% at the line and 51% from the field, and 22 of 43. He has really now become, and they needed him to, picked up his offensive game. And I do discuss that with Jerome Tang. We'll have him today at 4 o'clock. Craig?
No, it doesn't really fit now, what we were talking about. Go ahead.
All right, I didn't expect the graphics to go up that fast, but that's okay. So, who has, I want you to think about, I'm going to name a name. You both back and forth and on the chat room. I'm going to name a name and how have they gotten better since all the injuries have mounted up over the year. Jeremy Sohan.
Oh, Jeremy Sohan's, he's taken more opportunities offensively. So he's trying to score more because they needed him to score more. He's kind of doing everything. He's changed positions essentially in many of their rotations. So yeah, he's been everything they needed him to be. Didn't score much last night, but had his coming out party against Kansas on Saturday.
He had a couple of plays on the defensive end in that run right when Baylor was about to make the run to separate. One was a strip down in the paint, and UT had been having kind of their way underneath the basket, and then all of a sudden, Flo got a block, Sohan got a block, and it kind of became hard for Texas to score, and they were throwing up threes left and right, not hitting many of them. Matthew Meyer.
Matthew Meyer, I don't know how much better he's gotten this year. Is that what you're asking me?
Name of the players I mentioned since the injuries peaked with the injury to Jonathan Tchamwa. How have they gotten better since that moment when it looked like, my God, there's another catastrophic injury? How are they going to survive? He had 12 rebounds against Kansas.
Yeah, I would
he
say
had some big boy rebounds at the end of the game against Texas as well.
I think it's rebounding.
Fair. Yeah,
I think it's rebounding.
But I think of it more from an offensive standpoint. So yeah, rebounding, he's definitely improved and been beneficial in that regard. I think most of us think of him as like a scorer, and that's not really been his role. No.
James Akinjo.
Learning how to be effective without having his shot.
He really has had to grind through a tough stretch where he has not been as productive when it comes to his, especially long range.
Now that changed last night, especially because he scored very well, and he's very good at that high glass, everything that they do, driving the lane. He has adjusted his game to make up for the fact that the shots were not falling for him for about 4 or 5 games, but he never.
Or especially both halves. He's had one half, bad half.
Yeah, and he's distributing the ball really, really well.
He's electric eel. You sometimes, and he kind of, last night they needed him big time. Of course, they needed him at the end of the game against Kansas as well. How about, let's just make it obvious I just had the stats about Flo Thomas. That's when I was going to put up the graphic. He has become a guy that you have to worry about with what he can do on offense, and he's getting that touch. He's gotten that bank shot. His free throws, when it's one-on-one, forget it. When it's both, he's going to hit both of them. But he really has. And I didn't think, I'll be honest with you, I never thought of Flo Thomas going to be averaging 10 or 12 points during any kind of stretch. That would be the exception. And now they're kind of not dependent on it, but that's what he does.
What he didn't do last night, I thought was, and not as much against Kansas, a little bit, but he's cut down on his feeling like he needs to dribble the ball. Like, Flo, you're 6'10", 6'11". go be 6'10" or 6'11". And he's finally doing that. And, not kind of taking shots that he shouldn't take, dunk it, lay it up. Don't.
Or get fouled if you're not going to make it. Yeah.
And, but he does. Those 1-and-1s, those are something they're just going to have to deal with. But if there's 2 shots, then he seems to be a little bit better at it. But if it's a 1-and-1, the front of the 1-and-1, that's something he's still going to work on. But that's kind of hard for everybody. You watched Texas last night. They weren't great at the free throw line either.
Kendall Brown.
More offense, shooting threes.
How much do you think he would be even better if there was maybe an extra person or two that helped add with the depth? When he gets up and down the flow of the game, do you see it dripping with what he can do when it comes to the transition game? But he also does a lot of the dirty work. And then, of course, there is a young man, Adam Flagler. We're going to have a guest on tomorrow, Kevin Sweeney. He's a college basketball writer nationally who said he thinks Adam Flagler might be the most, and again, there's a lot of people who can have arguments for the most underrated player in college basketball. Still can't get over the 41-minute day and what he did, 29 points to get through Oklahoma State, right? And then what he did when they needed him at times against Kansas, and then last night with 19 points. The 3 he made in transition that was right after another 3, it wasn't the dagger, but it was like, man, when Flagler gets it going, shooters shoot, right? And he's got that ability to just – and then, okay, I want to – Dale Bonner. Dale Bonner does all the little things. He's not going to beat you with 10 or 12 points. He's not going to, be a great shooter. But how much has he grown up during this stretch? And other teams have players like this as well, but wanted to kind of focus in on who they are and what they're doing as Baylor now is a number 1 seed. Texas Tech a 3 seed. Kansas, depending on which one you look at, is a 1 or 2 seed. And the Big 12 right now headed to the last few days of the regular season. And